Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I just heard something upstairs. Sorry. I have to make sure everything's okay. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry about that, guys, if you heard it. I don't know what that was. My mom's upstairs. But hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you guys. I see you already signing in a little at a time. I signed on a little bit early just to make sure everything is okay. So far, so good. I'm going to jump in, okay? Yesterday's conversation was pretty interesting. And I think a lot of you made really interesting points. You had various ideas that you shared and brought to the forefront for people in the chat box. And just the comments I got after were very interesting. Some of you emailed me after yesterday's live chat just to get some information on books and resources and things that, you just want to learn a little bit more about. So I thought that yesterday's conversation really stirred a lot for a lot of you. I did have to put out a disclaimer for people who are not frequent viewers of the channel to say, look, we're not going to attack the people in the chat box. We're not going to attack the people in the comment section. This is a learning space that should be healthy and free. So I probably will put a disclaimer on this video as well. That being said, let's jump in. Everything looks good, so let's jump in. Yesterday's conversation, I really tried to define evil clinically, psychologically, and with existentialism and phenomenology in mind. I did not zone in on the theological view of evil. I also did not zone in on the religious view of evil. And that was for a specific cause, because I think for a lot of you, you're coming from a place of spiritual awareness. You know what's happening in your family. You know what's happening in your relationships. You know what's happening in your life. But I think relying on clinical, psychological, existential, and even phenomenological views of evil, you can feel like you're walking away with something that's firm and concrete and makes clinical, logical, rationalized sense. Does that make sense, guys? So there was a reason why I was very, very clinical in the discussion of what evil is. Now, in tonight's live chat, I do want to go over how to protect against evil. Let's say, for example, you have a part of your family that you really love, and they seem to be quote unquote normal, but there are other people in your family who not only manipulates and triangulates, but they lie, they deceive, they intentionally set out to harm. They seem to just have a dark, dim soul. What do you do with family members or people that you're in a relationship with who has a dark soul? You know what I mean? It's like looking at them, they appear sneaky and dark. Being around them, they say things that is triggering and emotionally triggering, and they push your buttons. They make you feel uneasy. You can't really be comfortable around them. And you also may not be able to understand why you can't just relax with them, trust them, embrace them. There's something getting in the way of that. Working with clients for all my life who are dealing with just about all my career, I should say, not all my life, but all my career, working with people who can't figure out why they can't feel comfortable with certain people, I've learned it's mainly because they were never aware of the psychology of evil. They were never aware of what was going on in the heart and the soul of that person that they were trying to connect with. I'll give you an example of this. I had a client back in 2020 came to me because her dad was just mean. He was controlling. He was diabolical, to say the least. And she didn't know how to feel comfortable around her dad. She said every time she would sit around him, she would feel like he's picking and pulling her apart. She would feel like he was judging, critiquing her, and making her just feel insecure and afraid. And she would come to almost every session and say, Tamara, I don't know what it is. I try to change my thinking about him. I try to change my mind about him. I try to change what my mother has told me about him. I really tried to come at him from a blank slate. That's my dad. That's my flesh and blood kind of a view. She tried to carry that view, and she just couldn't do it. So almost every session she would explain and describe this internal uncomfortability that she couldn't put her finger on, and over time, what we found out about her dad is not only was he sleeping with and molesting a student of his who was the age of 16. He's actually in prison now, and he's going to be in there for quite a few years. But he was violating one of his students, and hiding the evidence, coming on to another student. So he already was molesting one student. Then he was trying to start up another relationship with another student. And my client found this out by going through his phone, and she found text messages and videos and emails, and he had been sexting and texting one of his other students, trying to create a threesome between himself and two students that he was violating. And over time, she and I began to conclude that her uncomfortability around her dad was that she was having a internal spiritual experience of just intuitively sensing that something was wrong with her father. He had a dark soul, a dark mind. And that's what characterized evil for her. It was a very spiritual kind of scenario, because there was absolutely no concrete proof as to the internal experience she was having around her father. There was no kind of concrete, scientific, research-oriented, data-based, quantitative view that she can take of her father, because there was no evidence that he was molesting anyone. There was no evidence that he was doing something dark, dirty, and evil. But it was her internal intuition that told her every time she would get in his presence that something is wrong. And so what I began explaining to her over time, and I'm going to drop some terms for you guys in a little bit. What I began to explain to her over time is that I believe those of us who foster, we honor, we develop over time, and we are very much aware of an internal compass that I think we have as human beings. If we foster that, we'd be surprised at how accurate that inner compass can be. Some people want to call it intuition. We can say that. Some people want to call it your sixth sense. Maybe we can say that, right? But for me, clinically and personally, I believe that we have an internal compass, and it can be sharpened over time if you do all the right things that you need to do. Somebody may be thinking right now, well, what are some of the right things? I'm going to tell you that at the end. And this is backed by research as well. But I believe that we have an internal compass that tells us when we are around darkness, evil, and bad people. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And I honestly believe that that compass can be a God-given sense that we can foster over time. Let me drop some terms for you, okay? I really do believe that evil is darker, and it's way more than just the dark empath, the psychopath, the sociopath. According to research in phenomenology and existentialism, in theology, Christianity, and Catholicism, there's this idea of spiritual evil. Okay. And the way that existentialism, phenomenology, Christianity, Catholicism, religion, theology, the way that this is described is it's forces and entities and spirits, it's supernatural entities that sometimes can step on the right buttons in your life to let you know they are there. Okay, bear with me. I'm going to explain this in a scientific way for those of you who appreciate that version of things. But this kind of spiritual evil really does hold power in the lives and in the minds of people who embrace it, right? And even in our life as human beings. If you haven't heard me say this, I'm going to say it now. I really do believe that we are more than just flesh and blood. I think we are very spiritual. I think we are very what's the word I'm looking for? We're very existential. There's a lot of supernatural pieces to our lives. We just don't see them. Why? Because we've become almost desensitized to it. I think our world is so technological, and people run with the idea of medicine and science and technology and research and quantitative data that we kind of say, you know what? The spiritual side of things just doesn't exist because we've got so much concrete proof right here that there's no need to focus on the spiritual. And I think that's a devastating mistake that we've made. So I do believe that evil is everywhere. I think we've become desensitized, and I believe that we have evil people, dark people, and even just this spiritual evil that has penetrated the fabric of our society. And it makes it really easy. The way that evil is kind of built into the fabric of our society and our relationships, it has a way of desensitizing us to evil. So we kind of look at things, and I know I do at times as well. Sometimes I have to go back. I have to dial my mind back and say, wait a minute, go back and look at this from a spiritual lens. What is this saying to you, right? What is being spoken to you just by being in the presence of this person? What is being illuminated to you just being in the presence of this person who's dark and evil, right? Sometimes I have to do that. But I think we've become so desensitized to evil that we kind of approach the day just based on what we visually see, until we get around a family member, we get around a relationship, we get around the boss, we get around a coworker, we get around a neighbor or a stranger who just makes us feel something. And it's hard to pinpoint why we feel what we feel sometimes, right? So there's a spiritual evil. That's what I'm getting at. Spiritual deprivation is a concept of theology. It's also a concept of existentialism, and it's also a concept of phenomenology. Spiritual deprivation. Spiritual deprivation is this. It says that we have deprived ourselves of wisdom, knowledge, and truth. How? Because we are constantly focused on all the wrong things in our daily life. So we kind of, if you think of a battery, the battery, when it's charged, is at 100%, right? Well, when you're going through spiritual deprivation, meaning that you haven't fostered, you haven't grown, you haven't worked on the spiritual pieces of who you are, you kind of deprive yourself. So your battery goes from 100 to 0. And sometimes our battery goes to 100 to 50. Why? Because we have some idea of the spirituality of our relationships and our lives, but it's really hard to cling to that knowledge when we are so deprived. And so being at 50% of battery, walking through our relationships, dealing with evil people, dark people, cold people, callous people who are hard to fathom, if our battery is at 50%, we are almost spiritually deprived because we don't have the energy, the spiritual knowledge, the spiritual energy, the spiritual battery to help us get back to 100%, right? So then we kind of become blind. And so there we are trying to figure out why we feel this way, why we're so drained like a vampire around that person, why we feel so dead when a family member calls us, texts us, engages us in things. We're deadened, and that's because evil entails deviance. It entails darkness, and it has a way of showing itself to us over time. Those of us who have our eyes open and those of us who are sharpened spiritually, right? We're not spiritually deprived, meaning we're not on 50%, we're not on 0%. If we're on 100%, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for us to navigate our reality, our relationships, and the dark things that dark people do. Now, let me drop one more thing before we get into the chat box. Okay. Research suggests that the concept of evil is complicated. Concept of evil is complicated. When we think about evil, before we get into how do we protect ourselves from it, we need to know what it is. So let me highlight 3 things that research suggests we need to focus on. One is that if we are dealing with a person that we think is dark, evil, and deviant, cold and cruel, you know, and we can also throw in there the dark empath, the sociopath, the psychopath, the narcissistic parent, the selfish parent, all the things we talked about yesterday. We can throw those into the pile. If we think about who these people are, we have to consider that whether they directly made this allegiance or not, there's an evil allegiance to darkness. Research suggests that evil people, dark people, cold people, somehow over time develop this evil allegiance to darkness. It's almost like the psychological term positive reinforcement. The psychological term of positive reinforcement is this: that if you continue to be positively reinforced for a behavior that you engage in, for a mindset that you hold, you will continue that behavior. And in a sense, there's kind of like this allegiance that you can build over time. It's like a bond, you know? It's like a puppy who learns that if he jumps really high, he will get a treat. Then he becomes really good at jumping high because he knows that when he jumps high, he's going to be positively reinforced by a treat. So what does he do? He continues to jump high, and he may even try to jump even higher in hopes that he has access to more treats. Positive reinforcement. So B.F. Skinner is a historical behaviorist who came up with this idea. Pavlov also came up with this ideology of positive reinforcement. It's behavior modification. If I give you this, if you experience some kind of reward for holding this view, for behaving this way, you're going to continue to do it. So people who are dark and evil kind of align with that theory. And they build this evil allegiance to darkness. If I engage in this behavior over and over and over, if I believe the way that I believe, then I'm going to be positively reinforced. How? Because if I'm a narcissist and I suck up to people and reel them in and make them think I love and care about them, then I can walk all over them and trap them in a relationship and get my needs met while they'll never suspect that that was my plan to begin with. That can also be a sociopath or a psychopath, right? So they have this evil allegiance to darkness. If they feel that it has won before, they're going to do it again. The other thing, what is the one of the concepts of evil from a psychological and research perspective? The second thing is a loss of identity. Most people who are evil and they develop an evil allegiance to evil, they kind of build this inner connection to darkness and dark deeds and evil behaviors. They have a loss of identity. They may not know who in the world they are. They may not even know their left foot from their right foot. Why? Because their morals are low. They have an allegiance to darkness and evil. And so remember that battery I talked about, they are spiritually depraved. I think that's the way you say it, right? So their battery is not charged up. They're depraved. I can't figure out which one it is. You get the drift. You catch the drift. And so because of that, they have a loss of identity. Their battery is on 0%. They kind of, my grandfather, my late grandfather that I mentioned yesterday, He used to say that the mind is depraved, and man has become interconnected to evil, and so therefore he has lost because of it. That's what he would tell me in conversations about evil. Also, lastly, before I go to the comment section, deprived. Thank you. I just saw somebody say, thank you, Deborah Penna says deprived. Thank you so much for that. The third thing that research says, before I go to the chat box and welcome you guys and talk to you for a little bit, the second thing the concept of evil says in research is this, that we want more of what we think is good. We want more of what we think is good. So if you are somebody who behaves in an evil, dark way, let's say, for example, your brother is evil and dark, he does any and everything he can to his family, to you. He's disregarding, he's cold, he's really just wicked and dark in the way that he thinks about humans and feelings and other people's space and boundaries, right? He's just dark, right? So let's say that's your brother. If he thinks behaving in an evil way gets him what he wants, then he kind of sees that as a good thing for himself. And what does he do? He continues down that road of evil behaviors because he doesn't see the negative that it's bringing to him. He might one day, and he may never, and he may continue down that road of evil and continue to hurt and harm people. And that's why sometimes it's hard to pull our family members back, right? The family members who are deep into darkness, sometimes it's hard to pull them out of that muddy clay or that mud or that sinking sand that they are in, because they don't see it. They feel that they're getting some kind of reward from the dark deeds that they engage in. And this is called reinforcement. All right, guys, before I go to the chat box, let me give you just a snapshot of what we're going to talk about tonight. Hopefully wrap up by 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. You may want to know, do people who are evil know they are evil? What does psychology and research say about that? What does existentialism, phenomenology, and theology say about that? Does an evil family member, an evil relationship, an evil person, do they know they're evil? So you're going to want to know about that. You're also going to want to know some research on, what causes these individuals to behave like they behave. And then finally, how do you help yourself? How do you protect yourself? And what are some of the things that you can do to become a little bit more aware of your surroundings and what's going on spiritually in your relationships and in your life? And this was really hard for me to come to the conclusion of. I'm just going to self-disclose because I have my own personal belief. I just believe that, again, we are more than flesh and blood. We have a spiritual reality. I do believe in evil. I do believe that we need a deeper awareness of reality. We also need our eyes to be open to truth. And sometimes it is not because of trauma and because of evil and because of a lack of awareness, because of, years and years of just being socially taught that there's no such thing as darkness. I really and honestly do think that has not helped us as a society, right? So that's my view, but we're going to talk about how to help ourselves and how to help you, because you're going to want to know that. All right, guys, let me go to the chat box and see. You guys are just awesome tonight, my Lord. Ooh, that's hard for me. Is that Spanish? Suspectologia Aldia. I'm going to say that. Hopefully it's correct. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you. Robert Redmond's Clip Channel. I haven't seen you in such a while. I'm so glad to see you. So glad you're looking forward to this. I'm Daryl Harris. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you both. I can't remember if I said that. Gary Bennett. Hello and welcome to tonight's very controversial and complicated topic. Glad to see you. I'm going to keep going. Okay. Naftusja. I don't know if I said that correctly. Forgive me if I did not. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you. You pose an interesting question here. Please bring this back up later because I think I might want to address this. And I'm going to go through, do evil people know they're evil? So your question is going to be answered, I'm sure. Kim, happy Saturday to you. Glad to see you. A seat at the King's Table with Tanisha. Glad to see you as well. Welcome, welcome. Starburst. So glad to see you as well. And Lore Fit. Deborah Penna. Sorry, guys. Deborah Penna. Phoenix, if I hadn't already said that, and Courtney Frazier, as well as Kev Dower. Hello to all of you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Adila and Juby Joe, Bossy, Truthy 15, and Fifi LaFleur. Hello, guys. Glad to see you tonight. Philomena, Alethea, I hope I said that correctly. Welcome to tonight's live chat, and you're welcome. I really do hope this is going to be helpful for you guys. It's a conversation nobody has, right? We need to talk about it. T Mac and Moon Warrior, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Fifi LaFleur says, my dad's wife, his third, sounds like my grandfather. Okay. I had to get that out. I don't know why. My dad's wife, his third, tries to bait me with ugly remarks. She has taught her daughter, my youngest half sister, to do the same to me. Yeah. Don't you hate that? I'm sorry you have to go through that, Fifi LaFleur. I totally despise, I'll put it that way, baiting, because baiting is an evil behavior. Why? Because psychology and research suggests that when you intentionally set out to do something that is deviant, that is dark and harmful, you will likely, you will likely pull somebody in a negative way. And that is baiting. Hold on, guys. I'm so sorry. It's like a dry patch. So baiting to me is evil because it's premeditated. You know, if it's an accidental thing, that makes sense. But when someone's baiting you, they're saying, come on over here. I want to see if I can push that button, push that button, push that button, you know? And excuse me. And to me, that is evil. Fifi LaFleur goes on and says they want conflict, 100%. That's how they survive, off of conflict. Ellie Wen, hello and welcome. Glad to see you, as well as Princess Aztec. Yes, shalom to you as well. I love that. Laura Fitz said, welcome, by the way. Laura Fitz says, you can practice detachment, set strong boundaries, go low contact or no contact. That works for me. Absolutely. It works for me as well. 100% agree. Bossy Truthy 15 says, men created the society for them, doing harm to most men and women. Yeah, I hate to say that, you know. And men also started the field of psychology. Actually, to be 100% correct, it was white males that created the field of psychology, and it started all the way back. And there's probably someone I'm missing because I can't remember all the founders of psychology, but it went all the way back to Sigmund Freud, all the way back to B.F. Skinner, Pavlov, you know, Piaget. Like there's always been white men in the field of psychology that has driven it. You know, so when they see a woman who's doing really well, or they see a woman of color like myself who's doing well, it's shocking. They're like, oh my God, who is this? You know, because the field has been created by white males, and, you know, so has society. And so it's a man-driven world, right? And a field. Dragon Man Sasson, good afternoon to you as well. Glad to see you. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, you're welcome. Cam says, glad she trusted herself. Wow. Yes. Okay. Continuing on, guys. Hold on. Bear with me. Bay Honey, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. I don't know what you're referring to, but let me just say that, you know, if you are sitting around a person, I think I know where you're going with this. Now it just occurred to me. If you're sitting around a person and they're making you feel uneasy because you sense something dark about them, or you sense something's wrong, but you can't really put your finger on it, you have no tangible proof, but you just know something's off, right? And you can't trust that person, can that trigger fight or flight mode? 100%. 100%. Have I ever demonstrated to you? I don't know if I have. I'm going to demonstrate this to you, okay? And I don't know if I have paper down here with me. I don't. So here's how we separate this. So we have maybe I can write it out. Can I write it down? Maybe I can. Hold on, guys. Bear with me, okay? Because I just want to show you something. So we have what's called the brain and the spinal cord, okay? This is my terrible example of the brain and the spinal cord, okay? That spinal cord entails the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is how this is a little bit of a visual. Can you guys see that? Oh, come on, Tamara. Here we go. So the brain, okay, spinal cord, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system is found there. Okay. And the sympathetic nervous system is basically fight or flight. Okay. It's increased heart rate, racing thoughts, dizziness. You're kind of in fight mode, right? You know that you're going to have to defend yourself. You're feeling uneasy. You may be feeling nauseous. You may be feeling a little bit charged up, right? And this is the zone where most human beings sometimes get that amazing strength to fight back, you know? And it's kind of like you become hyper vigilant, you know, you're on the tip of your toes, just waiting for something, you know, and the body kind of gears itself up, if that's the correct terminology, to fight, right, and defend. And the parasympathetic nervous system is that cool down period in the body where, you know, you basically become, this calmer person that's more focused. You know, your thoughts are a little bit more slowed down. Your heart rate is more balanced. You're in a state of equilibrium, of balance, right? And so that's the parasympathetic nervous system. Well, sometimes when you are around a person who is evil and you intuitively sense something is off, something is wrong, it can push you into sympathetic nervous system arousal. You can become very dysregulated, you know, and you can feel very off and very afraid and very much defensive because your very wonderfully made brain has learned to defend you when it needs to. And so that, Bay Honey, that sympathetic nervous system arousal is quite I'll say extraordinary, because it really does respond to what's in our environment. And we certainly can't forget the brain, the amygdala. I'm not going to go into it, but you guys know it because I talk about it all the time. Bossy Truthy 15 says, I'm around darkness. Yep. Sometimes you can sense it. It's like walking through a haunted house on Halloween, you know, and some people make you feel like you're in that, you know. Tara Boss, hello, welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Okay, I'm just going to put your comment up here, Princess's Tech. James McDonald, hello. Yeah, welcome to tonight's live chat. And I'm so glad you said that. Evil is the absence of lie, 100%. Yes. Loonies, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I haven't seen you before, so welcome. Says, we're witnessing evil right now in our country. Yeah, I think we're witnessing evil all over the world. Can we say that? I feel like that's what's happening, you know, those of us who are watching, you know. Misha Yangu, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I feel like I'm not. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. She says, mother makes me feel uncomfortable, anxious, uneasy, and confused. Yes, I don't think that's a good thing. That means something. And this is where society has done us an injustice. My Lord, I'm choosing all the wrong words tonight. Society has done us an injustice in the sense that we often downplay and minimize what we feel when we're around someone or we're in a particular environment. You know, oh, that's just Jamie over there. You know, she has a strong personality. Or, you know what, you probably feel like that because this place is a little creepy. We minimize it. We downplay it. We never really take a step back and look and say, does this mean something? You know, you almost have to train yourself to think that way. Does this mean something? That's really what you should be asking yourself. In terms of, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, in terms of helping yourself identify evil in your world, dark people, things that are just not okay, you really should lead your life asking the question, does this mean something? And when I started doing that, does this mean something? It really does teach you to kind of pump the brakes and ask yourself, is there something deeper going on here? You don't want to go around with these lens on, believing that evil and darkness is everywhere, because I do believe there is light. James McDonald said it earlier. The absence of light is evil, and the absence of evil is light. And so I do believe that if we have evil, we also have the light. So we don't want to go around the world and in relationships and be in relationships thinking that everything is dark and evil, but you do want to go around and ask yourself, as you live your life, is there something deeper here? What does this actually mean? So for you, seeing that your mom makes you feel uncomfortable, uneasy, confused, you may want to ask yourself, is there a particular reason why? What's going on here? Orlando, hello, and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you back. I'm going to put Tara Bass up here again. Yep, I agree. Momtude, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Give it a think. Glad to see you as well. Give it a think says, I agree. Our mainstream culture discounts spirituality and things that are not quantitative. But who profits when we do this? It's dangerous to do this. I agree. I very much agree. Longevity Rituals, haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back, my friend. Glad to see you. Says, evil is your family trying to take you out. People trying to take you out while smiling at your face. Yes, I agree. I agree. Momtude says antisocial personality disorder. I say that could be part of it. Yep. It could also be, I am working my evil behind your back, but you'll know Monday morning when the boss fires you, I've been talking. That is evil, right? Or I'm going to work my magic. You just moved into the community. I'm going to go talk to first I'm going to come to your door and say, welcome to the neighborhood. Here's a box of cookies. Where are you from? Who's your husband? Who's your wife? Do you have children? Where do you work? And then as soon as they leave you, go running to the rest of the community and says whatever they want to say about you to stir up some kind of chaos or preconceived notion about you that isn't true. That is evil, right? I hate that. I hate that so much. It's awful. Got the memo. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says, I pray for spiritual discernment often. Me too. Can you imagine that a therapist has to have spiritual discernment? You don't have to be overly religious, but you do have to have spiritual discernment. Because not everybody that sits in front of us is a person who's just struggling with life. Sometimes they are the devil in somebody else's life, right? Sometimes it's that psychopath that, did A, B, and C to his wife. Sometimes it's that narcissistic parent that wants the therapist to agree with them so they can feel important and so they can feel validated. So we have to be able, even as therapists, not just to see with our eyes, but we have to be able to discern. We have to be able to be intuitive as well. I've seen some judges like that. They don't have all the evidence, but they can look at a person and discern, you did the crime. And to me, that's a really blessed thing that you can have. Christine, welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you. Says positive reinforcement is like conditioning. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I agree. Nancy R, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Yvonne Kwan, I think, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says they affect their children. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. If they're evil, dark parents, yes, they do. Kyra knows 14, 4K, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. James says, evil people will always use deceptive tactics like gaslighting, false projections, and word salad to confuse you. Our own discernment is key against such malevolent characters. Very much agree. Love that. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, you're right, Adam. Adam Lewis, hello, and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm just going to put this up here for people to see. Yes, he did. He did. I hate to say it. Kev Dower, hello. I don't know if I welcomed you. I think I did. Kev Dower says the dark triad people seem to have a lot of depravity. I'm just going to call it the dark triad. I think that's where sadism comes from. Yeah, it can. The dark triad, dark empathy, or dark empaths. I'm sorry, my brain is moving faster than my mouth. Dark empaths, dark triad, and sadistic behavior do go hand in hand. They're a little bit different, but they do go hand in hand. Okay. Leslie Stern, hello. And welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. She asked the question, is there research that connects excessive alcohol and dark allegiance to evil? There isn't, and I so wish there was, because I do believe there's a connection. If you think about the people who drink and drink, the alcoholics that drink, and then they go around and they beat people, harm people, start fights, there's often domestic violence, there's often this detachment from themselves in a way that almost makes you look at them like, who are you? You know? And should there be research on what happens to the brain when somebody is far removed from who they are? Yes. And we may be able to build some kind of interesting knowledge about evil and darkness even there too. So I don't know, but we need to improve. We do. Okay. Couple more people. I'm going back to the content in just a minute. Empowered woman, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Trisha, glad to see you. Trisha says, how do I deal with my ex who is keeping my kids in the psychological fog of narcissism and now do not leave the house or work? Well, that's a different question that kind of pulls us away from the conversation at hand. So I'm not going to go into it. If you, Trisha, put that same question in the comment box when this goes off, please do, if you will. That would be great. I'll answer it for sure. Okay, let's go back to the, let's go back to the content. All right, guys. Do evil people know they're evil? You tell me. Do you think? You want to know the answer? Research in psychology says it depends. Can you believe that? It depends. I literally did extra research last night. I was like, okay, I got to find the answer to this question. Do evil people know they're evil? And I went through journal after journal after journal, and these are professional and research journals. I looked at some concepts in phenomenology. I looked at some concepts in existentialism. I looked at some concepts in theology, and everything pointed to it depends. And if you, I also put one research study that's easy to read and conceptualize in the description box for you. But there's a research study that asks the question, do evil people know they are evil? And the conclusion of that research study says it depends. Why? Because psychology suggests that evil people tend to justify, minimize, and engage in polarization. Polarization is seeing life in black and white terms. There's no gray, As a society, we are polarized when it comes to spirituality. We say that there's either, there's only flesh and blood. That's a polarized view. There's only flesh and blood. There's only human beings and science. There's only medicine and science. There's no gray, so we're polarized as a society. Research suggests people who engage in dark, evil behaviors, they tend to justify. Oh, I only did A, B, and C because, Uncle BB over there called me that name. Or I only took our children and poisoned them against you because I felt that you were a bad mother. They're never going to come out and say that, but that's what they're doing. Parental alienation. I only beat that person up over there because they started it and I was using self-defense. Justification. Polarization. We just described that, right? Black and white thinking. And then there's minimization, bringing reality to a very small minimum. And so psychology says people who do evil This is how they conceptualize things, so they don't believe they're doing anything wrong. The other idea is having no effective empathy. No effective empathy. Effective empathy is affect, AFFECT, meaning emotional. So they have no effective empathy. They have no ability to put themselves in your shoes, to sense what you sense, to feel what you feel, to imagine what it is that you are feeling. They don't have that capability. They have often what is called cognitive empathy. And that is when they can kind of rationalize what they think you want from them, and they can also conceptualize with their mind what it is that you may want, how you may feel, what you may think, but they have no ability to feel anything. So if a dark, evil person is dark and evil, if they don't have effective empathy, they don't feel that what they're doing is wrong. They don't care what it is that you feel. They have an inability to feel that in the first place. Research also suggests that there is emotional sensitization or desensitization. I'm going to say there's a desensitization. So there's emotional desensitization. They don't have the ability. I'm having a hard time with words tonight, guys. They don't have the ability to be sensitive to what they're doing. And they don't have the ability to be sensitive to how their actions affect you, right? Sometimes we call that pathologic adaptation. Pathologic adaptation. You know, it's kind of like high levels of exposure to evil and darkness, you know, kind of increases bad and evil behavior. Let's say, for example, your dad is evil, dark, you know, everything he does is against other people. He has no respect for anyone. He lacks boundaries. You know, he runs over everyone. He doesn't care if you're elderly, if you're middle-aged, if you're a female, if you're a woman, if you have a disability. He's going to treat you however he chooses. All he wants in life is money, pleasure, and nothing to do. He's all about himself and about absolutely nobody else. He could care less. You know, he's bogartish and he's self-centered. That's your dad. What happens over time is the more people that he engages with who are just like him, the more environments that he goes to and spends his time in that includes people who are just like him, the more he's going to become just like that or just like them or worse in his character. And so we call that pathologic adaptation. You kind of adapt to something over time, the more exposure you have to it, you know? And that is why some people are very desensitized to evil, because the more of it that you take in, the more of it that you allow in, the less sensitive you are to it. And so it could be standing right here and you wouldn't know it's there. And so that is pathologic adaptation. You stay in the environment where there's darkness and evil. Somehow it reinforces your own dark and evil behavior. And to a certain extent, psychologically, high levels of exposure to violence, darkness, cruelty, coldness, callousness, it increases that person's ability to be even more evil. And so, you know, do evil people know they're evil? Not if they are emotionally desensitized, and not if we are dealing with pathologic adaptation. We also can, and research does back this up, that sometimes darkness blinds the soul. And in phenomenology and existentialism, and even in theology, some of the research shows that the more darkness a person is around, the more it blinds them, like a pair of shades being put on. It kind of dampens their ability to see themselves and others. And so, do evil people know they're evil? Probably not if they are blind. If they are so conditioned to be the way that they are, it can make it really hard for them to step back and say, wait a minute, I'm doing this evil thing. There are also, remember, I talked earlier about spiritual deprivation. They're also spiritually deprived. And so maybe their percentage is a 0. So they're spiritually deprived, which makes them vulnerable to greed, deception, darkness, weakness. And it's really hard to steer the boat when you are engaging in darkness and you are blind and you cannot see. And so research suggests that dark people, according to where we are right now in our research, may not know that they're evil. They're doing evil things. They may not be able to see them. Isn't that interesting, guys? Let me give you a little bit of research. Then I'm going to go back to the chat box. Then I'm going to show you some things about helping yourself become more sharpened when it comes to these kind of people in your life and in your family. Some research suggests that monsters are made, okay, not born. Monsters are made and not born. There's not one single factor that we can find in research that confirms otherwise. There's not one single factor in our research that can confirm otherwise. Monsters are made. Dark individuals are made over time. That's how a child who has been molested can sometimes be subjected to many years of being violated. But they themselves then turn and violate the next person. And sometimes they grow into adults who violate the next person and the next person and the next person. That father I told you guys about earlier, who was trying to create a threesome between himself and 2 of his students, he's definitely spiritually deprived. I'm going to say that all night, guys, because I can't figure out which one is which, but he is definitely on 0%, because he's so dark. And so research in psychology suggests that monsters are made because we can't find one single factor that contradicts that, Cultures and religions. This is another thing psychology highlights, that different cultures and religions believe that principalities and spirits and supernatural things drain you of your energy. So those evil people that you are sitting around, those dark minds that are trying to find something to do to the next person, that gossiper over there who wants to create chaos and stir things, they have a darkness that follows them everywhere because they're constantly going around trying to figure out how to hurt the next person, And so some cultures and religions believe that you can be spiritually, overcome by darkness. The Native American heritage believes that you can be overcome by darkness and you can begin to take shape and form of something that's really dark and evil because you constantly call it into your space, Christianity also believes the same thing, Phenomenology and existentialism also believes the same thing. It's a dark energy that you can begin to foster if you continue to think evil towards other people and you're constantly looking for ways to hurt somebody else. Over time, you become that thing. And lastly, in terms of research, before I go back to the chat box, there's this ideology of negative behavior adoption. Negative behavior adoption. The more you are around a person who is dark and evil, the more you experience a family member who is dark and evil, the easier it can become for you to also adopt those behavior patterns. So if we're talking about evil people, do they know that they are evil? They may not, because maybe they've been around other people who are just as evil and they have adopted their behavior over time, right? So a father and a mother who does dark, really evil things to other people can foster a child who then grows up to become dark and evil him or herself because of the idea of negative behavior adoption. I posted all the research in the description box, so you guys should be able to just click and see some of the research. I think it's interesting if you comb through it, a lot of us are like, oh God, forget it. I trust what you're saying because research is complicated, but it is all in the description box if you want to read a little bit more about it. All right, guys, I'm going to go back to the chat box, take a little bit of a breather, and then how can you help yourself? We're going to talk about that. Ronald Zion, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Thank you so much for that. I'm glad this is hitting home for you. Maisha Yangu says she's very inconsistent on the surface. She can be sweet, but I've seen her true colors come out many times towards me. Yeah, that's your mom you're talking about. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sorry that has happened. That is the most painful thing, right? You have a family member that you think you can love, and visually they seem okay, but you can tell they're evil on the inside because they're going to do something against you, to hurt you, to humiliate you, to make you feel trapped, to make you feel imprisoned, you know? Lorfit says, evil people believe they are good and you are bad. That is a good point. Sometimes they do. And that is backed by research indeed. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Don One, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member of my channel. I'm so grateful for that. And I love having you as a member and all my other members. There are perks to becoming a member for those of you who didn't know. And if you want to learn more, just click on the links on my channel. But thank you so much, Don One, for becoming a member. So glad and so grateful. Thank you. Princess Aztec says, I think my narc mom knew, but I didn't care. Yeah. Yep. Orlando says they have a reprobate mind. They can't change for the better. Yes. Yes. Let me break down a reprobate mind just for a second. It's really spiritual deprivation. That's really what it is. That you don't have the ability to see when you are around evil and dark people and dark things and dark environments, because you have become conditioned to see things a certain way, or you have become conditioned by the evil and darkness that you're around constantly. And so you lose that spiritual juice that puts the battery on 100%, you know? Imagine it as, the light in your world becomes dampened. That's really what we're getting at. Without me getting into scripture. I don't want to do that. Not just yet. God is love. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. CBs, hello and welcome. Glad to see you as well. Says, my faith keeps me strong and I thank God for discernment. Growing up in my family environment, it kept me safe. Me too. I can very, very much relate to that comment. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, we're going to keep moving, guys. Jeremy Robinson, I'm just going to say hello to you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you back. Odd and Out, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Says, thinking of Milgram's experiment after what you present. Yes, absolutely. I will post my live chat that's previous. We talked about Milgram's experiment. I'll post it so you guys can have access to it. Star, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for that. And glad to see you back in another live chat. Yes, you're welcome. It is a big spotlight, right? Empowered Woman says, I think evil people are delusional with superior importance. Yep. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are. They feel like they can do whatever they want to do to you and get away with it, you know? Trisha says, I love your dedication to us, Tamara, by the way. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for that. And I won't say you're welcome. You didn't say thank you, but you did say something. I don't want to misquote what you're saying. So thank you so much. I will say thank you. Thank you so much for that. I do feel that it is my purpose to help. And so that's the labor of love on this channel. I'll put it that way. Ronald Zion says, baiting is intentional harm. Yes, it is. Deborah Penna says, stand your ground and put healthy boundaries up to protect yourself. Yep. Anne of Hearts, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you. Adam Lewis says, like the Matrix, all they can offer is food. All this stuff you get anyway. Not sure I know you're saying something important, but I can't grasp it. So I can't comment. But I did think of the Matrix when I was discussing spiritual deprivation earlier. Yeah, I did think of the Matrix. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Phoenix says, yep, my sympathetic nervous system was stuck in overdrive for a few years. Thank God I got through that. It's torture. Yes, it is. It's like an engine running, fight or flight mode. It just constantly goes. And sometimes it speeds up and it goes faster and it keeps going and going and going. And then it may slow down a little bit, but you're still on edge, you know? And so it does. It takes a lot of years sometimes in treatment and awareness and, you know, spiritual awakeness to get yourself back to where you need to be. Don 1 says, evil is what evil does. Yes, it is. Gabrielle Hill, hello, and Gabrielle Hill, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says baiting is somebody trying to set you up for a reaction. Very much agree. Very much agree. Okay, just making sure I haven't missed anyone. Kyranos is absolutely diabolical and disturbing. Yes, 100%. Lauren Knight, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says evil is the indifference of good men. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. I like that a lot. Doberman Mama said, hello and welcome, by the way, if I didn't welcome you, says, that happened to me at a condo. The woman downstairs made up so much nonsense. I ended up moving, but may sue. Don't blame you. Don't blame you. Parika Amma, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Welcome. I don't remember seeing you. So welcome to tonight's live chat. Parika Amma says, I think most of our families of origin are simply getting the next generation either to I guess okay, I start reading because it feels like this is not following the conversation, but I think I see what you're saying. You're just saying most of today's society, especially young people, are kind of leaning towards going no contact, right? Physical distance is key. So let me pull from what you're saying. I'm going to pull from that and say that a lot of young people are finding it hard to deal with darkness in their family. They are tired of dealing with feeling minimized and harmed and unloved. And so what they do is they say, you know what, I'm going to put up a boundary between me and you. And this boundary says, do not cross it. I am going no contact until I can figure out how to help you or deal with you or love you again, you know? Ronald Zion says spiritual discernment can save lives. Yes, it can. I've been in clinical situations like that. AM, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. My neighbor did that smear campaign without even knowing me. Yep, that can happen. Yep, absolutely. I'm going to put your comment, Dr. Right Life, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm going to put it up on the screen for people to see. Yvonne Kwan, I hope I'm saying that correctly, says many specialists do not understand spiritual side of narcissistic behavior. A lot of specialists and professionals do not understand spirituality. Why? Because their battery is on 0%. Their battery is not on 100%. So when your battery is not on 100%, you're down on 0%. You're spiritually deprived. You know, you're spiritually vulnerable and weak to reality. And so what do? You just throw research out there, statistics, data, because that's all you've got. You may be the best person in the world, the most loving therapist, the most loving scientist, the most wonderful researcher. But if you don't have spiritual knowledge, right, and you don't have spiritual and intuitive awakeness, right, then you don't have anything else to offer. You can only give what you have. Naftasja, I messed that up. I know. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate you for that. So she says, evil is like a lot. Do not like to be questioned. They are worried for their mask. Yep. Social image to slip, but their words rarely align with their actions. Very much true. Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. And thank you for the super chat. M, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. I haven't seen you before, so welcome. MM says, good evening, Tamara and everyone for the first time. Yeah, Margarita here. Margareta, glad to have you. All right, before I go back to the content, wireless Sunday, Domingo, Barbarza. I messed that up. I had it yesterday, I think. Welcome back. Glad to see you. One last comment before I go back to the content. Anne of Heart says, I think they think everybody is evil deep down inside. So no, they don't think they're any different from everyone else. Everyone else just hides it better, they think. I wouldn't be surprised. That's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you for that, Anne of Hearts. How do we protect ourselves? And this is something that I do all the time. So here's what I've seen. Here's what I do. And here's what psychology says. And existentialism also says that we can do. And let me also put in there theology, because theology is in here as well. The first thing is abandon the cycle of cognitive dissonance. Get rid of it. Abandon the cycle of cognitive dissonance. Do not allow yourself to get stuck between two opposing sides of something that you can't work out. An example of this would be, let's say both of your parents are just very difficult. They've never done anything in your best interest. They have always been manipulative, conning, evil, dark, irritable, angry, self-centered, narcissistic, cold, callous, and they have absolutely no effective empathy, no empathy towards you. That's your mom and dad, right? That's one side of this piece of cognitive dissonance, that you have parents who are evil and dark. The other side of this cognitive dissonance is possibly your own mind getting in the way of your reality, which says, my parents, though, bought me everything I wanted to have as a little girl, as a little boy, took me everywhere I wanted to go, let me spend the night over many kids' homes and have sleepovers, put me in one of the best schools ever, spent a lot of money on me and let me do just about any sport or activity I wanted to do. The list goes on. We had wonderful Christmases. We had wonderful birthdays. We had wonderful family get-togethers. What does that do? That kind of gets you stuck between two opposing views of your parents. And sometimes when it is very clear that you are dealing with an evil, dark person, family member, parent, sometimes the mind, in order to protect itself, gets stuck in cognitive dissonance. And it's hard to kind of tease apart what's what. So you want to abandon the cycle of cognitive dissonance, abandon it, because it only keeps you stuck. And how can you abandon it? Well, don't allow yourself to get stuck in a position of, yeah, but they did A, B, and C. Well, there is this thing they did once, and that was nice. You know, don't allow that back and forth, because when you do that, you're going to get stuck in a place that's probably not going to be healthy. It's kind of like a traumatic bond, you know, the narcissist, the psychopath, the dark individual, they have a way of intentionally fostering your confusion. They intentionally foster your confusion. They intentionally create and foster a traumatic bond where they treat you lovingly one minute and they treat you like you are absolutely nothing the next minute. And so they know, though, how to charm you and love you and make you feel like they are good all over again. And so then you forget about it. Think of domestic violence situations where one spouse is battered. The other spouse goes off, calms down, cools off, and comes back with a handful of flowers and some chocolates to apologize. And so what does it do? It kind of gets you stuck in a position of cognitive dissonance. Don't allow it. The other thing is, be open to learn and grow in life spiritually. There's a lot of people, even professionals, they're like, no, I don't get that. I don't have time to research it. So I'm just going to go around and continue to see life like I prefer to see it. Or, you know what? I'm going to turn this podcast off because they're talking about spiritual things, and I'm going to go watch me some Dr. Phil, And so people do that because it's easier, and I totally get it. But, be open, try to be open to learning and relearning and growing and developing. That's the only way that you can protect yourself, is when you know what's going on, right? You also want to learn how not to compromise with evil. The minute you see it, walk away. The minute you see an evil person at your job and they do whatever they can to hurt people, they seem to be very self-centered and egotistical. You find out that there's no redeeming qualities, walk away. Don't compromise with evil. The other thing is, be wise with what you ingest. My mother and my grandfather, my late grandfather, always used to tell me this, that whatever you digest or ingest, it becomes you. You become it. There's almost an allegiance. Remember that evil allegiance I talked about earlier? It's almost like an allegiance that you build. Be mindful that, if you are embracing people who are dark and evil, if you are hanging around people who are dark and evil, if you are doing things that is dark and evil 1 minute, out of fun, consider, does this have an impact on me, right? Am I decreasing my spiritual awareness of things just by doing things that I thought was innocent? So you want to be mindful. What am I digesting and ingesting in my daily life, minute to minute, moment to moment? That whatever you're ingesting or digesting, it either takes your battery to 0% or 100%. There's a reason I keep mentioning a battery, because I want that to seep through for you guys. That's always been helpful for me, personally and professionally. If my spiritual battery is on 0, I can't see what's going on all around me. I need my battery to be turbocharged, So keep that in mind. It's also called habituation. I probably should mention that. Habituation. The more you ingest something, the more of a decreased sensitivity you have. You kind of become blind to the thing that you constantly take in. So if you're constantly digesting or ingesting something that's dark people, dark things, be mindful that habituation can happen. It's that decreased sensitivity to darkness. Build self-awareness. If you don't really know who you are, you can't identify what you aren't. You can't identify who's around you. You can't identify what's going on around you because your self-awareness is so blurry, right? So build self-awareness. I'm doing that myself every day, all day. It's a constant thing until we die. That's what I think. Building self-awareness. Prayer is so important for me. Meditation, reading things that just illuminates my knowledge, that kind of turns on that light bulb for me. Those are helpful things that you guys can also learn to embrace over time. You may want to practice it, try that and see. Learn and watch patterns of behavior. We as humans develop patterns over time. And if you're dealing with evil family members, or you're in a relationship where there's a person who's just cold towards you and callous and dark, try to watch their patterns. Look for behavior problems. Look for behavioral patterns. It will tell you a lot about the person. Sometimes I think we don't see those behavioral patterns until they do something bad to us. And then our eyes are like lit up and wide open, right? Because we're like, we tend to be, people who want to know what's going on in my life with this person in it. This person is now totally struck at me and my heart hurts. Let me look at them a little bit deeper, but you want to be able to see them before you get into that position. So learn behavioral patterns, watch them, observe them, become aware of them. People don't just do things because they're doing it. There's a reason behind it. My mom had a book years ago that you may want to check out. I found it while I was cleaning out the garage one day, and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. For those really, spiritual people who want to read something that's interesting, you might want to look into the book Demons in the World Today. I thought it was a really cool book. And it's a very ancient book. I was literally reading it and the pages were coming out of the book, but it's a really interesting read. There's some psychology in there. There's some theology in there. There's some existentialism. So check out that book, Demons in the World Today. Lastly, you want to foster and learn to embrace the historical significance or preservation of spiritual knowledge. Embrace the preservation of spiritual knowledge. We're so technological. We're so scientific. We're so bent on medicine that we minimize some of the really powerful historical viewpoints of the Native Americans, of, philosophers, The revelations from even Jesus when he walked the earth, the revelations of really powerful theologians and spiritual thinkers. We need to go back to that. I feel like we've lost that because we're so modernized, but I think we should preserve the spiritual knowledge of what our history has given us. I love the Native American stories. My extended family on both my dad and my mom's side, they tell stories. We learn through storytelling. We embrace spiritual things. My Christian walk, I also go back in history and I pull things up because I want to learn and read and grow. Right? We have tons of historical data and books and knowledge that we can embrace. We should do that. It's really, really helpful. What do you guys think of this? It's a lot, right? I feel like we covered a whole lot tonight, but these are different ways that you can kind of help yourself. Really, the way I want you to see this is like you are the pencil and you need to sharpen your awareness, and you can do that a little bit over time. Even learning about meditation can also help you. How do I meditate? How do I take time out? How do I center myself? How do I hear spiritually those things that I can't really hear because my life is so busy, So these are important things, right? Tell me what you think in the chat box, in the comments section. I know this is so controversial, but I want to know what you guys are thinking. I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say. All right, I'm going to talk with a little bit of you just briefly, and then we're going to wrap up. Transverse, hello and welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Says God loves mind cuffs. Google loves mind control. Swiftly, Alphabet hates truth. Okay, I have to let that seep in. It sounds deep. I have to let that seep in for sure. Black Moon Majesty, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Yes, I agree with that. Some people are born evil or made evil also, or get weirdly, sickly turned on by it, like a power thing. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Very much agree. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I very much agree. All right. Robert Redmond's clip channel says, I have a son like that. Yeah, referring to a situation that I brought up earlier. Yep. I have to say hello to you, HSR 1986. Hello and welcome. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Rad Angel, good to see you as well. I saw you yesterday as I was going back over the chat. Glad to see you. Totally love your comments as well in the chat box. Christina LZ, hello and welcome, says my ex-father-in-law. Yep. Lorefit says they are extremely numb. That's my dad. Absolutely. Mental Health Mermaid says, wow, yes. Good to see you and welcome to tonight's live chat. We're signing off here in just a little bit. Nature Boy, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Says no offense intended, but why did you gave to bring race into it? I think you meant why did you bring race into it? Sometimes we need to. Why shouldn't we? That's my question. Why shouldn't we bring it up? It's a part of who we are as human beings. It's a very visual, very well-known piece of who we are as human beings. So sometimes you have to bring race into it, right? And sometimes that's history. You might be referring to when I said white males created the field of psychology and, is the ruler of society. And that's backed by research. Go ahead and do a quick Google search. You'll find the information. Thanks for saying that. That allows me to clarify. Star says the book People of the Lie by Dr. Peck is very helpful. Read on this subject. Highly recommend. I highly recommend it as well. Thank you for saying that, Star. I read his book back in college. Literally, I have his book somewhere in here or maybe at my office, but one night I ate literally 2 bowls of popcorn and I'm like, this is something, I was so excited to read his view because it was finally a professional in my own field that thinks the way that I think. You know what I mean? And that some of us think in this field. Okay, Richard L.M., hello and welcome. He says propaganda and music has strong influence in this, people. Yeah, I very much agree with that as well. Yeah. Darkness and evil can be talked about in music. It can also be praised in music. Evil deeds is praised in music primarily, sometimes rock music, sometimes rap music, sometimes heavy metal, and I get that. Like sometimes I like that genre, but at the same time, those genres, but at the same time, you're right. Music can very much sharpen you. What's that theory where there's like snake music or music? It's like, oh, I can't think of the culture that does this. I'm going to drop it because I don't want to say the wrong thing and I don't want to be disrespectful to someone's culture, but all I can think of is a flute and a snake. Something about those two. I'll post it later if I ever clarify what I mean. Okay, Mama Boom Bam, hello, glad to see you tonight. Says, I heard someone's research prove that some are born that way, few but some. I'm not aware of the research on that. I will go back and do a little bit of a quick search. I'll post it in the description box if that is the case. Saturday's Child, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Says monsters often make themselves into monsters. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Okay, scrolling through. Yeah, Anne of Heart says Muslims call it the evil eye. Yeah, that's so true. Yep. Jamila Jabril, hello and welcome back. Glad to see you. Says envy. Yeah, we might envy. That's all she had to say. Envy. That's evil. I agree. There's some forms of evil and jealousy that you're just like, really? And my personal bias, I have to say, is that evil can be seen in envy and jealousy. Just be happy for me. Just appreciate who I am. Why do you have to be jealous of the way that I look, jealous of what I have? Why do you have to fight against me because you're mad? Why do you have to lord over me, right? These are the things that we deal with when it comes to people who are envious. Why do you have to make these digs at me? It's inappropriate. It's unnecessary. Why do you have to tell me you're jealous of me? I once had a client that said that to her mother. Why did you have to tell me you're jealous of me? These are things that we deal with when it comes to jealousy and envy. And it's just, my bias is why? Like, why do we have to be that way? It's a natural human emotion, but I never understood it. And I think that's where I need to grow, maybe that's where I need to grow professionally. Okay, guys, I'm going to continue on. Pharaoh the Great. Okay, we're not going to get into what that means. Pharaoh the Great, glad to see you. Welcome. Says family members are mostly demonic beings disguised as humans, which are there to teach you many lessons in life. Friends become more family. I mean, I'm not going to make that strong statement like that, but I will say, kind of the balance out your concept here, that family members are not mostly demonic beings. Maybe in your experience, but not in a general sense. I think we can have demonic beings and friends as well. Any human in the world. You may find that family members can be evil and you find more peace with friends or people who are not your blood. I think that's a more balanced view of that for sure. Thank you, Don Juan. I appreciate that. Kay Frankie, hello and welcome back. Glad to see you. Says if you cut off one toxic parent, but want to have the other still around, they're still married. Yeah. Is it a terrible idea to have an open house for the holidays and invite them both over? Yes, if you want. If you feel that you can manage both, you may have to set a specific boundary with mom and not with dad, That's something for you to figure out, but you can definitely invite people and have different boundaries. We'll get into that the week of Christmas. So stay tuned for my live chats. Dee Dee says, I always think you are studying my siblings and father. Wow. Goes to show you we're all very interconnected, right? Bandemic Loot Toronto says, most people seem to have succumbed to wicked ideologies. Yeah, doesn't that seem to be the case? I agree. I agree. Welcome to tonight's live chat, by the way. Easy Russian Lessons, hello and welcome, says, evil people are also good at future faking. Yeah, I like that. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm scrolling through one last time. Gary Bennett says, we all appreciate what you teach us. It gives us hope. Thank you, Tamara. You're welcome. And thank you for saying that. That's so good to hear. Thank you, Anne of Hearts. That's so sweet. Thank you so much. Guys, let's pause. Orlando, you're my last one. I was in fight or flight up until age 48. I'm 51 now. Thank God. Wow. That's amazing. That's a lot of life lived, being in this constant state of disequilibrium, right? Guys, you're wonderful. I love you so much. Thank you for being on the channel, encouraging each other, being supportive, supporting my work on the channel. When you become a member, when you give super chats, it's so well appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope this conversation was helpful to you. I also hope that it illuminates your thinking and gives you confidence, that you can sharpen some things about yourself so that you can protect yourself. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday night, and I will see you guys next weekend. Good night, guys.